Greetings all, hope each and everyone is doing pretty well based on request. In this presentation I will talk regarding the PBN or performance based navigation, and we'll have a general view of the PBN, the requirements, the specifications, and the need for the PBN, and at the end we will talk regarding some of the challenges that airlines are facing when they want to apply the PBN rules and procedures. As a general, PBN or performance-based navigation ensures a global standardization of the RNAV and RNP. PBN is related to the area navigation or RNAV. ICAO has published a PBN manual under the specification of document 9613. So if you search in the ICAO web and find out the manual, the PDF in fact, and download the PBN manual and go through the manual, you will find plenty of the useful and interesting information, the information which is needed that each and every pilot should have while operating in some designated areas or while performing some of the instrument approach procedures related to the RNAV or to the RNP. So in the ICAO manual, they have given a general definition of the PBN or performance-based navigation. And the general definition of the PBN in this manual reads that the PBN is the area navigation related to the performance requirements of an aircraft being operated in an ATS route or on an instrument approach procedure or in a designated area. So the performance requirements of an aircraft which should meet the PBN requirements should be in 4 terms. So the performance requirement, the navigation performance of an aircraft should meet the 4 terms. And what are they? They are the accuracy, then the integrity, continuity, and functionality. By heart, we know that all aircrafts are having some sort of the navigation equipment, because without having the navigation equipment on board the aircraft we cannot fly. But the question is that are these navigation equipments on board the aircraft meet the specifications and the requirements of the PBN, the area navigation, or not? So if not, we can fly, but not in some designated areas. We will not be able to perform some instrument approaches related to the RNAV or to the RNP, because we cannot meet the specifications of the PBN or performance-based navigation. Whenever we talk about the performance, we are not talking about the takeoff, climb, cruise, or maybe landing performances. That's the separate thing that we are doing. But this is the performance of the navigation equipments of the aircraft. This means that so in terms of the accuracy, are these navigation equipments on board the aircraft accurate enough or not? In case of the integrity, are they trustful or not? Can we trust on them or not? In case of continuity, we need them to continuously provide us the data and the information related to the route that we are flying or to the instrument approach that we are doing. And in case of the functionality, what functions they are doing or performing for us. And then the PBN is defined as the use of the RNAV and the RNP. Later we will see the main difference between the RNAV and the RNP as well. So coming back to the PBN or performance-based navigation, if you go through the ICAO manual from the beginning till the end, we will find out that there are 3 main components for the PBN. What are they? The first one is the navigation specification. The second one is the Nav8 infrastructure. And the third one is the navigation application. So these 3 terms describe the PBN. The first term, the navigation specifications. What specifications the navigation we need? And then the second term will be the Nav8 infrastructure. We should have information about the infrastructure of the nav aids either on the ground or in the space. And then the last one will be the navigation application. Now let's go through each one and briefly talk what they are specifying and what they are talking about. As we said, the first one, the navigation specification specifies the need for the navigation equipment on board the aircraft, and then it goes to the pilots, and then later it goes to the nav aid infrastructure. As we said before, the navigation equipment on board the aircraft should be able or should have the ability to meet the 4 criteria or terms of the performance-based navigation. They should be accurate enough, so in case of the accuracy, then in case of the integrity, in case of the continuity, and then in case of the functionality. Once all these equipments on board the aircraft meet all these requirements, and there is one point that we should talk about, why we are insisting so much on the navigation instruments on board, or navigation equipment on board the aircraft, because in area navigation we are not so much related on the nav aid infrastructure, the nav aids that we have on the ground and the nav aids that we have in the space. Mostly we are tighted and mostly we are concerned with the navigation equipment and instruments that we have on board the aircraft. So once the requirements of the aircraft or the navigation equipment of the aircraft meet the specifications of the PBN as described in the specifications, then in the structure of the navigation specification is the pilot's knowledge, experience, and training. So the pilots needs to have the required information and knowledge, and the pilots need to pass required training successfully, and later the CAA approval is also granted, because we need to have the operational approval from our local CAA based on the rules of the ICAO, which is globally accepted in all the states. Later in the navigation specification is the nav aid infrastructure. So whatever nav aids we have on the ground and whatever nav aids we have in the space. As we said before, mostly we are not tighted with the nav aids on the ground, like the VOR, like the NDB, like the ADF. We are not tighted so much, but we are concerned about mostly the nav aids in the space. So in the designated area that we are flying, let's say the specifications of the navigation equipments of the aircraft meet the PBN requirements, but we cannot ignore, for example, the GNSS signals. We cannot ignore the SIS, and we cannot ignore those nav aid signals that we need. So they are also one of the need for successful performance of the aircraft in such designated areas. Then the navigation specification goes to the application of the RNAV and RNP. Now this is a very good point that we should talk about the difference, the main difference between the RNAV and RNP. What's the main difference? The main difference of the RNAV and RNP is that in the RNP we should have an onboard self-contained system in the aircraft to continuously monitor the navigation performance of the aircraft, and if the limit is exceeded, then it's going to alert the flying crew. For example, such an alert can be a message in the scratch pad of the flight management computer, or FMC, and the title of the unable required navigation performance, or RNAV. So this is a kind of the alert for the flying crew that the navigation equipment of the aircraft, due to any reason, meaning malfunction or the lack of the signals or anything, cannot meet the performance requirements of the, for example, an instrument approach procedure, or maybe the instrument departure procedure, or maybe flying in a designated area. So we have seen the for example, title of the RNAV1 GNSS or RNAV1 GPS. So what does the letter 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 or 10 mean here? It means that in 95% of the flying time, we should not, or the limit of the lateral, for example, flying clearance should not exceed 1 nautical mile. This is RNAV 1. Mostly RNAV 1 is for the instrument approaches and the instrument departures, and then later for the en route, for the oceanic en route, for example, operations, we have more and more limits. We are not so much tighted. For example, even we can have RNAV 4 or maybe RNAV 10. And RNAV 10 means that we are allowed to have a deviation of the 10 nautical miles either left or right along a designated route that we are flying. Then in second component of the PBN or performance-based navigation is the nav8 infrastructure. As we talked before, it relates to the requirements of the nav8, which we need the signal, which we need information to collect from these nav8s in order to be able to perform our operations successfully. And they are mostly the nav8s on the ground and nav8s in the space. So as we talked before, the nav8 in the space can be the GPS, or for example the GNSS. The signals are required that we to help the navigation equipment of the aircraft to successfully perform their functions or tasks for which they are designed and operating. And the last one, the last component, is the navigation application. So when we apply the navigation specifications in the nav8 infrastructure altogether, then we can apply it in flying in en route or flying in some designated here spaces, or while we are performing for example instrument approach procedures, either for the approach and landing or for the departure. So this is going to be the application or the usage of the navigation specifications and the nav8 infrastructure altogether. Now, regarding the PBN benefits, what benefits we can get from the performance-based navigation or PBN, or applying the PBN procedures. The first and immediate benefit that we can get from the PBN is a shift from the sensor-based navigation to the performance-based navigation, meaning that we are not so much tighted with the sensors that we have on the ground. Remember the basics of the navigation. For example, if we fly a designated route, in between we have a VOR, so we need to follow an for example inbound radial to the VOR, then fly over the VOR, and then follow outbound radial outbound. So this type of the navigation is a sensor-based navigation, because we are tighted to a sensor, which is the VOR located on the ground. So we need the signal from the VOR, and using the signal we can fly inbound and then outbound to designated. But the main benefit of the PBN is that such operation is totally ignored. We do not need any sensors like the VOR, like the NGB on the ground, unless all the navigation is failed and we cannot operate or the performance of our navigation equipment on board the aircraft degrades. So in this case we shift back from the area navigation to the basics of the navigation, as long as we have some nav8s available on the ground. But mainly we are tied to the nav8s in the space, or which are the GPS or the GNSS. The first benefit after the basics that we talked about is the application of the PBN reduces the need to maintain sensor-based procedures and their associated costs. So applying the PBN will relieve us from having the sensor-based nav8s on the ground, and for the controllers and for the authorities who have the space and the area under their control to spend plenty of the money and keep those sensors active, because VOR or NGB is not such a unit that once installed or put on a specific place on the ground, then leave it alone. It will work continuously 24 hours. No, it needs some maintenances. We need to spend money on them. So we are relieved from this while we perform the PBN rules and procedures. The second benefit or good benefit that we can get from the PBN is that it avoids the need for developing sensor specific operations with each new models of the navigation systems. So this means that if an aircraft is equipped with modern navigation equipment, so we do not need to modify the ground-based sensors based on the navigation equipment that we have on board the aircraft. And the third good benefit that we can get from the PBN is that it allows for more efficient use of airspace and selection of more fuel efficient routes. We are not tied to the ground-based nav aids, as we said before. So as an example, let's say we have a route from A to B, but in between we need to fly to the point C and then turn towards the point B. So from A to B we need to fly another point here, and it's based on the nav aids infrastructure that we have on the ground, mainly for example VOR, and it can be an NDB, it can be an ADF, anything. So now we can select a more efficient direct and short routes without having the or thinking about the ground-based navigations. Do we have them available to provide a specific signal to follow and to fly from point A to point B, ignoring flying to point C? So the PBN or the RNAV just eliminates the need for this, and directly we can create a point, and then the navigation equipment on board the aircraft will allow us to directly fly from the point A to point B without flying to point C. This is a very good benefit that the airlines and the pilots can get from the PBN. More efficient routes, more efficient, for example, flying tracks, and in fact that's going to be beneficial for the airlines, for the pilots as well. And the fourth good benefit that we can get from the PBN is that it explains how RNAV and RNP systems are used. So the PBN, another benefit is that it explains us how the RNAV and how the RNP systems work, what the main differences are, as we know till now, and how these operations are performed. So in general, the PBN enables operational benefits in the areas of the safety, the flight efficiency, and airspace capacity. So also it plays an important role in improving cost and reduces the environmental impact. Till now, for the area navigation and mostly for the instrument approaches, we have different names which is related mainly to the states, the need for the states. For example, we have RNAV, for example, GPS approach, we have RNAV GNSS approach, or we only have the RNAV approach. In some of the areas we have RNP approach. Now ICAO is working on criteria that they want to change all these different names into a common name, which is going to be the PBN approach. So later you will see all the approach charts related to the area navigation under the title of the PBN approach. For example, PBN approach runway, let's say 1 to right, or PBN approach runway 34 center, anything. So they eliminate the need for having different names, because that's going to be a little bit confusing for the flight crew as well. But now for the time being, as we said before, they are working. So this is going to be the second step to change the whole procedures under the title of the PBN approach. But right now they are working that how they should change the RNAV approach and the title of the RNAV GPS approach, or for example RNAV GNSS approach, any specific runway, to the PBN approach, to the RNP approach. So they have issued a circular document 333, and in this document they are specifying the need for the states regarding the training of the pilots, and something about the navigation equipment of the aircraft, that there should be some modifications, and also the pilots should truly be familiar and trained for this purpose, that they will change the name of the RNAV approaches commonly has the RNP approach. But later, this is not going to be end of the story. Later we should wait for a common name, which is going to be the PBN approach for all the area navigations and area navigation instrument approaches related to the PBN. As we talked before, in the navigation specifications of the PBN, we talked about the pilot's knowledge and training, and later we said about the local CAA operational approvals, that the pilot should be approved by the CAA, local CAA, that okay, the training and also the experience of the pilot is enough that he can operate in designated areas under the umbrella of the PBN, or performance-based navigation. So pilots need to successfully pass a ground training. That's going to be a ground school of 1 or 2 days, and then after successfully completion of the ground training, they need to have a proficiency check in the simulator, and later they need to fly in actual aircraft in designated areas, and should truly be familiar with the terms and procedures of the RNAV and the RNP, and has a general the PBN, or performance-based navigation, what it is, what are the specifications, what are the needs, what to do in case we cannot meet the limits of the PBN while being operated in some ATS routes or on an instrument approach procedures. This is one of the requirements for the pilots, in fact. And then from the 25th August 2018, pilots may only fly in accordance with the PBN procedures, and after they have been granted the PBN endorsement to their IR rating, meaning that you should have the PBN rating in your IR, an instrument rating. There should be a extra rating, so it will enable you to fly some designated spaces and routes related to the PBN. Then until 25th August 2020, our pilots can only fly in routes and perform approach procedures which do not require the PBN privileges. But after 25th August 2020, PBN privileges shall require for all IR pilots. So this means if you are an instrument rated, you need the extra rating of the PBN, passing a ground school, then the required simulator sessions, and then have the approval from the local CAA to enable you to fly designated routes, specific airspaces, and perform instrument approaches related to the RNAV or RNP, or general under the umbrella or shadow of the PBN. To apply the PBN, in fact, there are some challenges for the companies whenever they want to apply the PBN rules and procedures in their fleets. The first challenge is the pilot training. So they need the whole pilots, not only the captains and first officers, to have the required knowledge and have the required rating of the PBN, and then they need to seek the operational approval from the local CAA. So this is not going to be through reading a manual or saying, yes, I know these terms and policies. No, but we need the ground school, that the pilot should attend the ground school, and the ground school should be in an approved ATO or approved training organization, not just to pass the time and get the money from the pilots. There should be instructors to teach the flying crew what the RNAV is, what the RNP is, what the specifications of the PBN, and then passing the exam, the pilots will be able to attend simulator sessions, in fact, to gain some required knowledge. So to help the pilots to have required knowledge and performance on the PBN and then gain the approval from the CA is a challenge for the companies, so for the airlines. Why? Because they need to spend money. So mainly for a company, spending money is a challenge. Mostly the companies, they need just to get money and put in the bank. They do not want to spend it, but this is going to be extra spend of the money, expenses which they should do on the pilots to help them to have required knowledge and performance on the PBN. And the second challenge for the companies will be the aircraft system. So they need to have an overlook and overview of the navigation equipment of the aircraft and see if the navigation equipments in navigation, for example, the systems on board the aircraft meet the PBN requirements or not. If not, there should be some modifications. So in fact, this is another challenge for the companies, and they need to spend money on it. And the last challenge will be the names, definitions, and charts. So as we said before, just to eliminate this as a challenge for the companies and for the airlines and for the pilots, ICAO is working round the clock to have a good modification on the names of the approaches that we are doing. So they just want to eliminate the need. Let's say as a pilot we have flight to 3 or 4 airports, we need to perform instrument approaches. In one airport we see the RNAV approach runway XYZ anything, and the second one we see RNP approach runway XYZ anything. So what the difference between RNAV and RNP? Why in this area we need the RNAV, in this one we need the RNP? As long as the requirements are something the same. So in this case, the ICAO is working the companies and pilots to have a general and basic name for all the RNAV approaches and the title of the PBN approach. They will eliminate RNAV, RNP, so these things. And then why it is going to be a challenge for the companies? Because when there is a shift of the name from the, for example, one title to another one, there will be some requirements and some procedures that the pilots should be familiar with, or the changes maybe. So based on this, they are going to be there will be some circulars under specific titles for the pilots, and the companies need to inform the flying crew based on those changes. And inform the flying crew will not be only to distribute the circulars for them. At least we need to have some short-term ground schools and let them know what the changes have been brought, and then they will adjust themselves for such performances and procedures. So colleagues, thanks much for watching the video. That was a very short presentation regarding the PBN performance based navigation based on requests from my colleagues, but to have a complete information and regarding the specifications, the requirements, so we need to go through the PBN manual. But let me explain to you that going only through the PBN manual is not also going to be enough. At least we need to go through the charts, through other some requirements to have complete knowledge and experience on the PBN rules and procedures. Thank you very much. Any question, please leave in the comment box and we will discuss about it. Thank you, and see you back in my next presentation.